Hi there, Star Riders. Welcome back to Sincerely Yours, where every chapter is a new adventure. Grab your pen because today we're talking about a show that should have been legendary. Today we're diving into The Legend of Korra, a series with beautiful animation, bold ideas, and a powerful female lead, but one that never quite lived up to the legacy of Avatar The Last Airbender. Now, don't get me wrong, this video is not a Korra hate video. Legend of Korra had amazing moments, but when you put it next to Avatar The Last Airbender, something fell off. So, in this first part, we're breaking down why Avatar The Last Airbender connected so deeply and why Legend of Korra characters struggle to feel as relatable. Because before we talk about pacing, villains, and structure, we have to talk about the people we're supposed to care about. So, again, grab your pens and your tea, Star Riders. Let's talk about why Legend of Korra never quite hit the same. Before we even get into Legend of Korra, let's talk about why Avatar The Last Airbender works so well, because this is the standard Korra had to live up to. First, the characters. Every single member of Team Avatar had a personal journey, and we got to watch them grow right in front of us. Zuko and Sokka especially deserve the Most Improved Character award. The Zuko we meet in episode 1, the angry, honor obsessed prince, is not the Zuko we leave with at the end. His redemption arc is legendary. And Sokka, he went from being the comic relief warrior wannabe to a brilliant strategist and leader who earned everyone's respect. By the finale, neither of them were the same people we started with, and that's storytelling at its finest. And of course, Uncle Iroh. The wisdom he dropped throughout the series wasn't just advice for Zuko, it was advice for us.
I know my own destiny, Uncle.
Is it your own destiny? Or is it a destiny someone else has tried to force on you?
Stop it, Uncle. I have to do this.
I'm begging you, Prince Zuko. It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
Protection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love.
I say, she's my sister and I should be trying to get along with her.
No, she's crazy and she needs to go down.
Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place.
Whether it was about patience, forgiveness, or carrying grief, Iroh had lines that touch people's hearts and still give chills years later. He wasn't just a side character, he was the show's moral compass, a mentor to the audience as much as he was to Zuko. But it wasn't just individual growth. Avatar The Last Airbender relationships evolved naturally too. Aang and Katara's bond deepened slowly. Sokka and Toph's friendship grew through banter and trust. Zuko's eventual acceptance into the group wasn't rushed. It was earned through time and conflict. Every connection mattered, and that made them feel real. Then you have the messages of each episode. Avatar The Last Airbender was a kids' show, but it never talked down to its audience. Each story carried meaning, hope, forgiveness, responsibility, sacrifice, and the series as a whole gave us a clear, powerful message about balance within the world and within ourselves. Let's not forget pacing. This series is a master class in how to build momentum. Nothing felt wasted. Filler episodes still develop the characters, added world building, or deepened the themes. It's honestly something I take notes on for my own writing, because Avatar The Last Airbender proved that even slower episodes can carry weight. And perhaps the biggest reason why Avatar The Last Airbender stuck with us, the characters were relatable. Sure, none of us can bend the elements, but we can all see parts of ourselves in them. Aang struggled to balance responsibility with childhood. Katara's fight to hold her family together. Top's battle to be seen for who she truly was. Sokka's mix of insecurity and humor, and even Zuko's journey to find his true identity beyond honor and anger. That's human, that's real. All of that wrapped together created a show like no other. Avatar: The Last Airbender wasn't a cartoon. It was an adventure, a comedy, a drama, and a philosophy lesson all rolled into one. It invited us into a world that felt alive and characters we could carry with us long after the credits roll. And that's why people love Avatar: The Last Airbender, which makes it even more frustrating to see where Legend of Korra stumbled. The biggest problem with Legend of Korra is that its characters just weren't relatable. Where Avatar: The Last Airbender gave us layered personalities with clear growth, Legend of Korra often left us with one note traits, inconsistent arcs, or flaws that never paid off. And when you put these characters side by side with their Avatar: The Last Airbender counterparts, the difference is night and day.
Round 1. Fight!
Cora was written as hot headed, stubborn, and reckless, which could have worked if those flaws led to steady growth, but instead, she cycled through the same lessons again and again without much progression. Compare that to Aang, who also had flaws. He ran from his responsibility, he avoided conflict, but those traits were tied to his age, his trauma, and his values as an air nomad. By the finale, he overcame those struggles in a way that felt earned, while Korra often just felt stuck.
Round 2. Fight!
Mako was meant to be the serious one, but instead came off bland, inconsistent, and at times unlikable. His love triangle drama didn't help either. Zuko, on the other hand, started as unlikable too. Angry, entitled, laser focused on honor, but his story gave him depth, context, and redemption. By the end, Zuko was one of the most beloved characters in all of animation, while Mako never got that arc, he's just stayed flat.
Round 3. Fight!
This is where the two sides of a coin idea comes from. On paper, Bolin is Sokka 2.0, the comic relief, but Sokka's humor worked because it was layered with growth. He made dumb comments and got smacked around for them, but he also became a brilliant strategist and warrior. When Sokka got hit by a female character, it was funny because he deserved it. He said some wild, borderline sexist shit and got humbled for it. That was comedy with purpose. Bolin, though, his comedy often fell into empty gags or situations that weren't funny at all. Take toxic relationship with Eska. The show played it for laughs, but it wasn't humorous. It was uncomfortable. Watching him get dragged around by a controlling partner wasn't the same as Sokka cracking jokes and getting checked. It felt forced, and worse, it undercut Bolin's chance to grow into something more. He never evolved past the goofy one.
Round 4. Fight!
Asami had potential, brilliant engineer, non-bender, holding her own alongside powerful teammates, but she was underused, often reduced to the love triangle drama. Compare that to Katara, who balanced nurturing with ferocity, or Toph, who brought both comedy and raw strength. Asami could have been that kind of standout character, but the writing didn't give her enough depth or independence.
Round 5. Fight!
Tenzin was positioned as the mentor figure, but he often came across as rigid, overwhelmed, and lacking the warmth that made Uncle Iroh unforgivable. Uncle Iroh's wisdom touched not just Zuko, but the audience. Tenzin's lessons sometimes felt like lectures instead of guidance. He had good moments, but he didn't feel that spiritual anchor role in the same way. Avatar: The Last Airbender gave us characters who grew, changed, and made us feel like we were growing with them. Legend of Korra gave us characters whose flaws often went unresolved, whose arcs were messy or rushed, and who never felt as relatable. And when you don't connect to the characters, it doesn't matter how flashy the fights are, the story loses its heart. And here's the thing, flaws in characters aren't a bad thing. In fact, flaws are what make characters interesting. But when you don't pace the story right, those flaws don't evolve, they just repeat. And that's what happened in Legend of Korra. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, like I mentioned before, pacing was a masterclass. Every episode felt like it had a purpose. Every filler still moved the story or characters forward. In Legend of Korra, the pacing was all over the place, and that uneven structure didn't just hurt the story, it made the characters feel even flatter. Now, before I keep dragging Teen Core through the mud, let's flip the lens for a second. Because honestly, these characters had the potential to be great. The growth was there. It just needed more time, more intention, and better pacing to shine. Flora's story could have been one of spiritual evolution. Instead of cycling through anger and frustration, imagine she's slowly learning that true strength isn't about domination, it's about connection. If each season peel back another layer of her impulsive nature, we'll see a young woman growing into a balanced avatar who doesn't just fight for peace, but embodies it. A core who learns patience from airbending, passion from water, resilience from earth, and discipline from fire. Now that's character growth. Asami had iconic potential, a non bender surrounded by some of the world's strongest warriors. She could have shown that innovation and intellect are superpowers. Watching her rebuild Republic City, changing corporation corruption, and lead through empathy through could have cemented her as the tech heart of the group. Imagine her running future industries like Tony Stark with manners, bridging benders and non benders through her designs. Bolin's humor was his shield, but beneath it was so much heart. His art could have shown him evolving from entertainer to everyman hero. Maybe he inspires non benders to stand up. Maybe he unites the pro bending scene with real activism. He could have been the bridge between ordinary citizens and the Avatar, the guy who reminds Korra who she's fighting for, Sokka 2.0, but with a dash of Robert Williams' warmth. Instead of being the team's emotional dead zone, Mako's journey could have explored vulnerability. The tough guy cop archetype works best when it cracks open. If we saw him struggle with loyalty, duty, and identity after losing his parents, his stoicism would make sense. Over time, he could have grown into a protector who values empathy as much as justice, less brooding X, more big brother energy. Tenzin's growth should have mirrored Korra's, both learning to let go of control. Early on, he's burdened by Aang's legacy and the pressure to rebuild air nomad culture. By the finale, imagine him realizing that airbending isn't about strict traditions, it's about freedom. He could have taught Korra that same lesson. Sometimes the best way to lead is to breathe and let go. And speaking of Cora's growth, I think it's time we give her a little empathy and context because her flaws weren't just personality driven, they were systematic. Before we judge her too harshly, we got to talk about the environment that shaped her, or honestly, trapped her. Cora wasn't just stubborn because she wanted to be, she was raised that way. The White Lotus, Tenzin, even her dad Torok, they all meant well, but they unintentionally built a cage around her and called it protection. This girl had to ask permission just to let Naga out to play. The Avatar, the literal bridge between worlds, couldn't even walk her polar bear dog without clearance. That's not training, that's isolation. And because of that, Korra never got to see the world like the avatars before her did. Aang, Roku, Kyoshi, they all learned balance by experiencing the world. They lived with different nations, absorbed new philosophies, and connect with people outside their comfort zones. Korra, meanwhile, was taught to master the elements like school subjects instead of living them. Now I get it, her era was different. The four nations weren't as divided, and the world was evolving into modern, interconnected society. That should have been the opportunity, not a limitation. Imagine how powerful it would have been if Korra still traveled the world to learn from people who preserved the heart of each element's culture. She could have gone to the Fire Nation temples where firebenders treat their element as a sacred life force, not a weapon. She could have visited Earth Kingdom villages that still value patience, grounding, and discipline. She could have trained in both the North and South poles to understand her own heritage with multiple perspectives. And after all that, in her journey in Republic City learning airbending under Tenzin, not as a cage student, but as a young avatar who's seen the world she's meant to protect. That version of Korra could have been unstoppable. The tragedy is that her mentors, the people meant to guide her, ended up holding her back. They taught her control but never taught her freedom, power without power without perspective, and that's not on Korra, that's on them. And honestly, the lack of freedom ties right into another major problem: pacing. Because when a story doesn't give its hero time to breathe, learn, and evolve, it starts to feel like they're sprinting in circles instead of walking forward. And that's exactly what happened in Legend of Korra. One of the biggest problems with Legend of Korra is its pacing. The series never found its rhythm, and that's a killer for storytelling. A good pace lets characters grow, allows the audience to breathe, and gives the world room to feel alive. But Legend of Korra constantly swung between extremes, either rushing through major plot lines or dragging out moments that didn't need all that attention. The clearest examples are the villains. Arma had one of the coldest introductions in the franchise, a mysterious leader, charismatic, terrifying, stripping people of their bending. He had all the makings of an all-time great villain. But his arc was crammed into 12 episodes. We barely scratched the surface of his ideology before his reveal and downfall. Imagine if he had 20 episodes. That extra time could have fleshed out the equalist movement, shown the cracks in Republic City, and given us more of Armand as a threat before his mask came off. Instead, we sped through what could have been a season and a half story in one book. Little Lock might be the weakest villain of the bunch, and pacing is part of why. His betrayal felt predictable and rushed, and his dark avatar transformation came out of nowhere. With only 14 episodes, there wasn't enough time to make us care about his ideology or even fear him. If Book 2 had 18 to 20 episodes, they could have slowed down, built tension, and explored the spirit world more meaningfully instead of jamming a god tier fight into the finale that felt unearned. Zahir is where things started clicking again because the pacing was tighter and the threat felt real. But even here, 13 episodes didn't give enough time to show the Red Lotus philosophy spreading across the world. Imagine 18 episodes where each member of the Red Lotus got focused development, showing why their anarchist ideals were so seductive. Zahir had the potential to be the best villain in the franchise, and still might be, but pacing kept his arc from fully blossoming. Kavir was introduced late in Book 3, then pushed as the main threat in Book 4 with only 13 episodes. That's not enough time to build a character who's supposed to be the face of fascism in the Avatar world. Her rise to power should have been gradual, maybe seated back in Book 2 and expanded in Book 3. So by the time she was the Great Uniter, we felt the weight of her authority. With 20 episodes, Book 4 could have shown her consolidating power, winning loyalty, and crushing opposition, making her defeat land harder. That would have been around 76 to 78 episodes total, roughly the same length as Avatar The Last Airbender. And honestly, that's exactly what Legend of Korra needed. The world, the villains, and the characters all demanded more breathing room. Instead, the story just felt like it was sprinting through arcs and hitting big spectacle moments without giving us time to absorb the meaning. When pacing is too fast, we don't have time to sit with moments that should have hit harder. When it's too slow, we check out. Legend of Korra fell into both traps, and the result was a series that often felt like it was sprinting and stalling at the same time. And no matter how good your animation or fight choreography is, if your pacing is broken, your story will always feel like it's missing something. So when you really look at it, the biggest difference between Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra isn't animation or fight scenes or even the world itself. It's connection. Avatar: The Last Airbender gave us characters who grew, changed, and felt human. Legend of Korra gave us characters with potential, but without the same time or structure to truly evolve. And in part two, we're going to talk about why. Because these characters' issues didn't come out of nowhere. They were created by, again, pacing, by story structure, and by how the show handled its villains. So if you thought the characters felt stuck, wait until we break down how rushed the entire story really was. Let me know in the comments, do you think Horace's characters felt because of writing or because the story never gave them room to grow? As always, thanks for tuning in, Start Riders. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss part 2 or any more out of this world ideas. Till next time, keep your pen to the stars and your heart in the pages. Sincerely yours.